Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast, Practical Lessons from Standing Up a Greenfield Security Operations Center, sponsored by STAMIS Networks. My name is Carol Auth of SANS, and I will be moderating today's webcast. Today's featured speakers are Joost Bale, Product Manager at Hunt and Hackett, Peter Manev, Co-founder and Chief Strategy Officer of STAMIS Networks, and Chris Crowley, Senior SANS Instructor. If during the webcast you have any questions for our presenters, please enter them into the questions window located on the GoToWebinar interface at any time. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to our presenters.
Thank you very much, Carol. This is Chris Crowley. I'm going to go first. Just want to briefly mention what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give a little introduction just to set the frame, and then we're going to hear from Joost and Peter about what they did in the face of the challenges of building an effective security operations center. So just a brief introduction of myself. If you haven't met me or seen me speak previously, I teach classes for the SANS Institute. I've written a course on security operations. I've written a lot of material related to security operations and mobile, but I have a broad spectrum of capability, and I tend to focus on security operations in my consulting and in my training. This is something that I've been writing about for quite a while, and this year, like the previous 3 years, so a total of 4, I've written the Security Operations Annual Survey. And this year, there were about 100 people that responded to it. There was a lot of interesting information in it. It's a really long survey. A lot of times people only go about halfway through, but this year it was great because everybody that took it basically finished it. As I was going through the response sets, I found this difference, this dichotomy, this split that seemed pretty obvious to me. And that was the reason why I titled this year's survey A Tale of Two SOCs. It's a Charles Dickens reference with a split between 2 different paradigms that people were expressing. And the 2 paradigms that I saw in the information was there were some people who were saying that their management really seemed to care about the problem of getting skilled staff to be participants in a security operations center. About 30-ish of the respondents said that that was their experience with their management. Management understood, then the management acted in their interest to help them to get skilled staff and retain those skilled staff. About 30 people also said that management didn't care, didn't seem to care, didn't matter to them one bit about the skills deficit that they were complaining about in their security operations center. So that was the overarching theme that I had in the report. There are lots of questions that I asked. I would really encourage you to go download this report, SOC-Survey.com. If you don't like reading, if it's too hard for you to read a 20-page paper with a lot of details and granular plots and charts and so on, I actually read it for you on YouTube. So you can just go to my YouTube channel and listen to it if you prefer that way. I really am trying to make this information available to people. And the other part of what I actually made available is the Jupyter Notebook, the raw work of everything that I did in order to come up with the plots and the analysis that I saw in order to enable you to do some of your own analysis. Let me just talk about one thing beyond that big split that I found, because everybody loves talking about technology, right? Technology solves all our problems. If I just buy the right tech, security is easy. It seems to be the attitude that a bunch of people have. We're going to hear a different opinion today because it's not my opinion. I don't think that Peter and I don't think that Joost are going to express that. They're going to talk about the difficulty that they had in setting up a security operations center and the challenges that they've faced and how they've overcome it. But nonetheless, we actually need technology to be able to make our security operations effective. Like, I can't just read the electrical impulses on the wire to understand what's going on. Like, my eyes don't work that way. And so people reported what their best ranked tools were. EDR, VPN, host-based malware protection, the SIM, and network-based distributed denial of service were the top 5 in order based on the number of A's, A grading that was received for these 5 technologies. And I was surprised and kind of delighted about the fact that EDR actually showed up in there as a top tool, because the way that a lot of people use EDR is it's great instrumentation, but it also requires an analyst to do it. It's not just magic. And the same thing for the SIM, right? A lot of organizations 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, thought the SIM was going to do magic for them. And it's really just a tool enabling you to make sense of information that you have. Okay, and so this is the background and the framework from the SOC-Survey. And what we're going to hear today from Joost and from Peter is how they're using technologies in order to enable their security operations. So Joost Bell, if you want to go ahead and take over. Oh, I think that you need to take yourself off of mute. Still not hearing.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, now I am.
Okay, that was interesting. It's the technology you were talking about. It's really magic.
Technology is great when it works.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. Yeah, my name is Joost. I have been working on the Blue team for a little while now. One of the things that are, I think, very relevant for this presentation is that I used to work in product management for an MDR service and later for the technology of a platform that powers one of the larger SOCs in Europe. But I also have a technical background, and I like to combine those two well, points of view, basically. But I switched jobs recently last summer and joined a new cybersecurity startup called Hackett. They're based out of the Netherlands. We are a cybersecurity startup with people who have been in cybersecurity for a little while now. And we try to use data, to try to approach cybersecurity as a data problem and see, well, basically to try to take the gut feeling out of it. Another thing that we see is that cybersecurity is a system, so most things are connected. So that means that a single control doesn't live in a vacuum. It's always linked to other controls, and then you can just do detection. You can just have a SIM. You also need to have the other controls. It needs to be balanced. Well, basically, we help customers before, during, and after an incident. So what we did for the last 6 months is to set up a new security operations center to deliver our managed detection and response service to our customers. So what I'll share now is how we do that and things we learned. Maybe it's of value to you. First, a few words about our customers, because we run a SOC for our customers. Basically, it's a service, so that's typically a little bit different. That also means that our customers are, of course, facing targeted attacks like ransomware, but they don't care as much about cybersecurity as we do. They just want to focus on their core business, and cybersecurity is a factor in that. And what they need to do is to control the risk from cybersecurity, like any other risk. And as an industry, I think we have to do better to help companies to actually control that risk. There's no single metric or set of metrics that we all agree upon that we can use as an indicator of risk, in the same way that you have in financial risk, for example. They lack insight into IT, but specifically into IT security. It's a black box. So the way customers approach us is not unlike the way you would go to a car mechanic. You don't care about how your car works per se. You just want to go on the road as quickly and safely as possible. And so we assist customers from their capacity with our MDR service. Of course, you can have a presentation without a Sun Tzu quote. You need, well, if you know both yourself and your enemy, you can win 100 battles without a single loss. And I think there's some truth in that for cybersecurity as well, because basically, what is the threat landscape that you're facing? And if you take a look at that from a security operations center perspective, there are a couple of questions that you should ask yourself. So what detection technology do I need? Is it really the magic bullet, as Chris said? What data sources on that technology do I need to monitor? And I think more importantly, what detection logic do I need? So what am I looking for? So how do you translate adversary knowledge into security controls, basically? And how we approach that is using, well, this flowchart basically. We sit down with customers and say, all right, let's figure out which APTs are relevant to you based on maybe very simply put on your country and your industry, but it typically takes a little bit more craftsmanship. But you can go a long way with that. And there are a lot of online sources, Attack or MISP Galaxies, but also TICERT, for example, is a very nice database of that kind of data. And if you know the APTs, you know their preferred way of operating, their TTPs. And if you know their TTPs, you can take the next step to actually say, all right, how do I set up prevention and detection? So what are the controls I need to put against the TTPs from the known adversaries, basically? And if I want to detect such a TTP to be used, where do I need to look? And that's a different way of looking at it, because then you can actually find your blind spots. Yeah, we also use sys controls for the defense. It's well, I like it because it's an easy to use best practice framework. And then you want to get the system going. So you don't just do this once, but you need to have a feedback loop set up. We see great value in testing both your prevention controls, but also your detection controls with things like breach and attack simulation to actually daily test if you're still detecting certain attacks, for example. All right, so if I would like to show you now how we use that using a couple of screenshots from an internal database we have. It's called the threat diagnostic, and what it contains is a list of, when I made the presentation of 412 adversaries or APTs, and for every APT there's a card, and it contains all the details, and you can also see where the data is from, and the easy thing to do is to say, all right, let's filter this list for, well, in this example, for biotech companies in Germany. And if you do that, then the number of APTs that are relevant for that subset goes down from 400 to 25. So that makes it more specific. And what you then would like to do is summarize it and say, all right, what are the commonalities? What are the things that really stand out? And maybe they are of interest to me. So, of course, you need to have a world map, but this also shows your subset of APTs on what other geographies do they focus. Another thing you can do is populate the attack matrix and color code the number of times a specific DTP is used by this set of APTs. And this gives you a bit of a guide to prioritize your controls and say, but also to understand what's important. And one thing that stands out in this example, I think, is that in terms of initial access, phishing is barely used by this set of APTs, which is interesting, but external remote service is way more important. So that might help you to say, okay, I need to do more on inventory control, for example. So if you know these TTPs, you can translate them to controls. So what we did is translate them to the sys controls. So this gives you a prioritized list of the stuff you need to do. MFA on number 1, maybe not so surprising. And we translate it into data sources that you need to monitor on. So these are the specifics that you need to look at. Interesting thing is that at the bottom you see the kill chain, and you see that the partitioning of the monitoring priorities differs a little bit between the different steps in the kill chain. About those monitoring profiles or monitoring sources, what I think that you need to think about is, what does my nuclear triad look like? It was coined, well, the name was coined by Gartner in 2015, but I think it's still valid. But I think you need to look at the selection of data sources to monitor on in different dimensions. So it's not just on-prem, but also in the cloud, or specifically for your endpoints, endpoint networks. And they need to multiply each other because one can go without the other, I think. And there are different benefits. So if you look at the network, like the SANS probes do, it is very objective. It doesn't lie. It's just the facts that you see. And it's very useful to spot lateral movement or command and control traffic. Also, it doesn't need agents or anything. It's just install and go. Endpoint data is very detailed on the endpoint and very useful for exploit detection, persistence mechanisms, and hunting as well. And if you have logs, application logs, server logs, etc., that really glues together basically the endpoint and network data, I think. We also tend to use a lot of honeypots because that's well, it's a high value, easy to deploy kind of detection mechanism that is well, of a lot of value, I think. Importantly, to round this off, is that I think you need to stitch those data sources together. So that means that you can easily see, all right, this is happening on the endpoint. Where does this attack path continue on the network? That should not be different systems. So what we also found on how you would monitor is that there's a bit of a shift in SOCs, is that the traditional SOC and IR are sort of merging into a more modern SOC, and that means that the number of telemetry data points is ever increasing. Cloud visibility, if you're CASB, you have a lot more data to look at, but you would also like to go more in depth, and the traditional SOC was more of the well, way back when it was more of the alert factory. So you would see an alert, the system says this is something, and you would pass it on to your customer. I think we passed that a long way station a long way ago, but still you need to do more in-depth work, like root cause analysis, or well, to actually get to the bottom of it, find the patient zero. So another thing that you need to do, I think, is to increase the reliance on alerts versus hypothesis-based threat hunting. There's, I think, these days, threat hunting is a staple, and you should actually use it. And it depends on how you see the split, but I think it should be like 1 part alert handling, 3 parts threat hunting. Then you need to have IOCs that also work cross-domain, so you don't need to just look add specific Yara rules for your endpoint, for example, but you also need to see, all right, what happens if the endpoint, if the attacker moves laterally across the network? Is there something that links those two together? And last thing is curated threat intel. There is a lot of threat intelligence available these days. It's something that has really changed. It's stuff like SOC Prime or Sigma repositories, but also a lot of network rules are available these days from a number of vendors. And for example, in the SANS sensors, they're all supported. But you also, so you need to use that, but at the same time, you also need to fill it in where it's specific for your organization. So that's I think, important part in setting up a SOC, modern SOC. Then who will actually do the monitoring? Well, I have a background in software engineering and product management, and I think that principles from software engineering should also be applied to running a security operations center. And one thing is the multidisciplinary teams, and I think there are two ways. One is more the background of people in the team, so you should have a mix. The analysts for well, it's the most obvious one, but also include people with offensive security background in your team or with IR experience, because they can typically add a lot of value and a lot of different insights into your work. And what you typically find is that there are people who are more experienced in looking at network traffic, or more experienced at Windows, or maybe specific cloud solutions. So you need to have a mix of those, and not just all on this with the same well specialty. Then I think you should have a sprint or a scrum approach for building threat intel. So have peer reviews of how well you're making new rules. Also do unit tests for that, and make sure that you have a CI/CD setup. So if you build new intel, it is deployed on your network probes or on your SIM as soon as possible, but not sooner. And automate all the things. And it sort of goes hand in hand with measure to improve. There are, well, nobody likes to well, repeat themselves, I think. So I would like to briefly touch on a couple of things I've seen in the last year, and then show you what our SOC looks like, and then give it on to Peter. A few things I have seen is that well, this is basically due to technology, but stitching telemetry is becoming more and more common, so that's a good thing. The threat intel is easier to consume with software like MISP and OpenCTI and other commercial tips are actually providing a lot of operational value these days. Some use cases have moved on from having a handful to having hundreds of those, because you can easily define them using URL or Sigma. And you also see that SIMs themselves have taken a next step by going cloud native with Microsoft and Google. And gluing SOC operations together, so integrating with the different systems is getting easier than it used to be. And well, it's a trend that everything is moving to the cloud, but still, I think there is a lot of value for systems that will never go to the cloud, like OT or industrial systems, and there will always be a lot of there will always be some on-prem left, I think. Don't forget that. So, what does our SOC high-level architecture look like? What have we? Well, where are we now? We support a number of data sources, like well, pretty straightforward. It's also what's available at our customers. And on the other hand, we have our SOC analysts, and they use a SOAR. The SOAR is the primary daily workbench, if you will. And through that, they communicate with our customers. And all the data sources generate alerts. They go to the SOAR being analyzed. And what's easy to do these days is to also do the response action from your SOAR. So the integration is getting a lot easier. With the Cloud SIM, you can collect all sorts of telemetry from your data. It's typically high volume, and also generate alerts from that. And what we did is to also forward the telemetry from the stainless sensors to the Chronicle Cloud SIM to have improved visibility, which is really, really valuable for us. And then at the end, there's the threat intel people who actually connect to all the different types of detection sources, basically. I would like to show you a short demo of STAMUS, but I'll together with Chronicle, but I am also out of time, so maybe we can do that at the end. I would like to skip on this and give the floor to Peter.
Thank you very much, Chris, and use apologies. Just adjusted the slides here. My name is Peter Banev. I'm co-founder and chief strategy officer at SANS Networks, and I'm also a member of the executive team at OSF, Open Network Security Foundation, which is the organization behind Suricata. Been on the blue team since day one of my professional life, and proud of it, and very thankful to be surrounded with experts, and very thankful to be working in the industry that constantly learn and try to improve. So that being said, we are a blue team. We come back with defense in our mind. So we're here to support and try to make the job of the defenders easier. So the defenders face an onslaught of threats, well-funded adversaries, and we just need to keep at it to make their job easier, and not just give them another screen to log in, but actually make their life easier in every aspect we can. So at STAMUS, STAMUS was founded by Eric LeBont and myself in 2014, and we actually heavy contributors to the open source solutions as well. So we try to help everybody by way of, for example, SELC's Gopher Cap and STAMUS Networks app for Splunk. And besides that, we also, of course, have the Scirius Security Platform, which is a commercial network threat detection, hunting, and response solution. So why actually NDR is so important? Well, actually, no matter how long an actor stays low inside your network, and for example, in the case of, let's say, Sunburst, it was actually, judging by the information of the analysts, they were actually staying low between 12 and 14 days before they start, before they were starting actually communicating on the network. But no matter how long they stay low, at some point they'll need to communicate in and out, and that communication happens in the network, and that's we look at it our area responsibility. So we need to stand up for the defenders there and make it easier. So the network doesn't really lie. It holds the ground truth for an enterprise security posture. All sorts of cyber threats generate some sort of communication that can be observed on the network. There's no question about it. So one of the challenges that we actually face, or a typical day at the SOC enterprise, is these millions and billions of events and no real way or guidance of where to start from. The SOC screens are overloaded. You have the wall in every SOC, and there's a lot of stuff there already. However, what do we really need to actually expect from, what should we actually expect from an NDR solution? So a couple of things to begin with. An automated detection of known stuff is always good, to elevate that stuff. But we should offer an automated process or detection logic to elevate suspicious activity that is actually actionable. Also very important is actually easy to integrate into an already existing workflow or to supplement a workflow in a manner that is not disruptive. So in other words, don't change the whole process because you have a new vendor in the house. Also, we have to provide visibility and all network connectivity. So architecture is very important here, where to position different sensors, what to monitor, and what data to get out, as Jos was mentioning. Organizational specific insights are critical. If you defend the organization, defenders are usually the people manning the screens there, are usually the ones that actually hold the ultimate knowledge of what the organization looks like, because they're just daily at those screens and know the organization inside out, both in terms of architecture and in terms of a regular setup or administrative setup. Well, it's also important for to be able to provide guidance for threat hunting and the SOC team, and to be able to provide for knowledge transfer. Line performance is also critical. So there's a lot of things that need to actually click in together for that to be useful, not only to look good on the architecture slides, but also to come into life and actually be of use and help the defenders. That being said, let me move on one slide. So that being said, we need to cover a broad spectrum of the detection. So the detection needs to be based on different sorts of rules or detection logics, anomalies, events, policy violations, to differentiate between shadow IT ops and what's really malicious, third-party threat intelligence or threat intelligence agnostic. You need to have access to all events for all sorts of investigation, but actually only elevate the ones that are really useful, that really matter. Not to make the SOC team, not to give the SOC team that bombardment of automated emails and SMSs and alert messages and all that. With that being said, if for those of you who actually deployed in multiple continents, like Just is actually doing in their specific case, small actually points go a long way. And one of those could be, for example, if you try to open a network firewall port in another country, in another continent, in a remote office, that might be a difference between, just click on install and configuration, and anywhere between, 1 day and 6 months of change management. So easy integration is actually important. Being able to have open APIs and to empower actually the defenders is actually essential. Being able to integrate into existing notification systems via means of webhooks and similar is also essential. Being able to deploy anywhere, on premises, on cloud, or virtual appliances, gives the defender that flexibility that they need and stops them from actually coming up with workarounds in all sorts of aspects when they actually need to deploy, and makes them more concentrated on what they need to look at. Of course, the traffic line rates only go higher and higher, 10, 20, 40, 100, and it just keeps climbing. You need to actually keep at it and be able to keep the pace for sure as we move along. That being said, deep visibility into all network activity. So actually, organizational context goes a long way. When you're actually looking at an event, and if that event has an IP is one thing, but when you're looking at an event and that event has also a username, a host name, or a description of the network segment it's coming from, is actually all of a sudden saves that extra 1 or 5 queries of the SOC team operator, or that extra automation that they need to do, and makes it much more understandable and easier to investigate and follow. Another aspect is actually expert guided handling. Here, the idea is actually to be able to turn, to go on the aggressive, to be able to turn an idea and a hypothesis, and to be able to actually use a system that supports that idea and hypothesis translation into actual detection logic. So the system or the tool needs to be able to empower that without, again, need to spin up an extra project to facilitate that. To just these systems and tools should actually empower. So it will be very interesting to be able to, with one look on the screen, to be able to say, hey, what's new on the network today that wasn't there yesterday? Is that an obfuscated transfer that we've never seen before? Well, there's a encrypted proxy in the client's network that actually wasn't there. We haven't seen that before. Maybe that's something that needs a very good look into. And by way of doing that, actually helping out the SOC team to correlate that data to EDR event logs and vice versa. We need to help each other out here because the fight is common. We have a common enemy. And of course, knowledge transfer actually is a big point, in my opinion. We currently are facing no problem is a lack of expert resources. Hence, even more importance of actually being able to easily and fast transfer knowledge between team members in the SOC team. So, for example, you can have a senior analyst that actually, based on some detection logic formula, classifies events as important or information, and then the junior analyst can take over and with just a couple of these specs, actually, a couple of these steps, rather, actually, just look at what's important and facilitate that knowledge transfer. This is actually transferring knowledge because the junior analyst actually gets an idea of why this is important much faster with respect to the organization. It's very important, I think. It's also a big point to enable the senior analyst to actually customize his or her own hunting logic, if you see, or hunting filters, or custom detection logic. So it's important to empower them to actually do that without changing, again, the process and the tools. So I think this is really important. So what does the SANS solution consist of, actually? So folks, looking on at the diagram, moving from left to right. The SANS network solution consists of 2 major components. So we have the SANS probes and the Scirius Security Platform software. The probes may be deployed in the cloud, on-premise, or some combination of the two. Typically, multiple probes are connected to span or mirror ports in locations where they can monitor both perimeter and internal traffic. The probe software is installed on turnkey physical appliances from SANS, or as a software that you deploy either on your hardware or in the cloud. Again, we need to be flexible. The function of the probe is to inspect all traffic. So inspect flows and reconstruct session while analyzing these flows and sections to perform real-time threat detection and enrich the resulting events with extensive metadata. In order for the probe to do its job, it ingests different IDS rules or signatures, threat intelligence. It could be file checksums, domains, URL lists, IPs, you name it. And of course, your organizational context in the form of network definitions. You may obtain these rules and threat intelligence feeds from different sources, either open or commercial third parties, such as Proofpoint's emerging threads, or subscribe through the SANS networks, or actually use your own threat intelligence. The next major component is actually the Scirius platform software, central software which may also be deployed on a dedicated SANS appliance, your hardware, or in the cloud. Again, bringing in flexibility, making it easier for you to deploy anywhere. As its most basic level, SSP, the abbreviation as we use it, provides the central management of the probes, consolidated event storage, and guided threat hunting console for proactive threat hunting and incident investigation. Here, I'd like to point, most importantly, SSP extracts and organizes data around hosts, assets, and users to bring the event data to life and make sense out of it in the context of the organization. You know, remember shrinking those billion logs or half billion logs a day to actually the 5 or the 1 that you have to act on. Also here, there are 2 major time-saving advancements. So these are the event tagging classification, which allows for senior analysts to identify events and or entire categories as important or informational, as I was mentioning before, enabling a junior analyst to tackle only those which are automatically classified as important. The second time-saving advancement here is provided by the advanced threat detection that takes place. We call this serious threat detection, whereby SSP identifies high confidence threats to your critical assets and maps the advancement of those threats along the different stages of the cybersecurity kill chain. So the serious threat detection is available in the serious threat radar module and leverages threat intelligence from SANS Networks threat research team. And your own expert security analyst. So this is an important port. So via custom threat definition. So we need to work together on this to be successful here, to be on the winning side. So security teams can use the system for automated detection, proactive threat hunting, incident investigation, policy enforcement, like shadow IT ops discovery and similar. As we mentioned earlier, the event tagging classification, along with the custom serious threat definitions, allow your most valuable senior analysts to transfer their expertise to less experienced personnel. So we need to facilitate that as well and to help. And finally, and also very importantly, so we recognize that we're not the only solution vendor in your security stack. Okay, so this is clear. So SANS Networks is not the only vendor in your stack. So we provide multiple integration paths into the other tools in your arsenal. So we need to be easy to integrate through ways of open APIs, REST APIs, or webhook notifications. We can actually easily connect to CM, SOAR within your system when you use CM, SOAR, incident response messaging systems like Marmo, Slack that you already have in place, or your XDR system. So talking about the Scirius Security Platform, what we have here is the base, which consists actually of a comprehensive network inspection to provide complete visibility into the network based on rules detection, network traffic analysis, business context. We need to build on top of something, okay? So then on the next level up, we actually like to emphasize on guided threat hunting for proactive network defense, incident investigation using enriched event logs. So correlation, enrichment analytics, they all come in here. It's an important building stone. And of course, all that would actually be able to provide automated detection, notification of acute and urgent threats of assets tracked by their state, rather, apologies, on the cybersecurity kill chain. So where we are in the actual process. With that being said, I actually like to walk you through give you a short overview of what the Serious Threat Radar is, and then actually switch on to a live demo video and emphasize a couple of points in there and show you in reality how it works. So we have a short demo coming up. Let me switch that off. So this is actually the Serious Threat Radar. So what we have here is basically the highest level of automation. So we've automatically analyzed so many events. We've discovered that these are the assets under attack and these are the unique threats into your organization. Also displaying at what stage of the kill chain they are. So here we have 2 actions and objectives. They've already been breached badly. And you can notice here there's multiple threat actors together, okay? So it's not uncommon for them to work in packs because they get more exposure like that and more reach. A typical example. So the next one over, as I mentioned, a quick summary here of actually that we have 3 major families working in here. You have data theft, lateral movement, and offensive tools being employed. That could be anything from regular stealers to lateral movement breaches and actually offensive tools use of the likes of PowerShell and Firewall strike and similar. So this is very important. Also, a natural question is like, what assets are under attack? What threats have we seen actually active on those assets? When? What part of the organization is affected, or these assets we've seen on, as you see here on your screen? And of course, it's very useful if we've seen a user logging in there, or at the time that that we've seen those threats active in there. So that's very important to give us the who, what, and when. Also, you always wonder, okay, so these are the assets under attack, but like for that specific attack, let's say TrickBot here on the screen, who are the offenders? You know, where is that coming from with respect to that specific asset or those specific assets? So with a few clicks, you can actually be able to say that. And I just want to emphasize another point. Anything that you see on the screen here, we actually share our data readily with any CM that you have already installed in there. So the data that we display here, you have it as well. It's about actually being easy to integrate and enabling the Blue to be much more successful and impactful in their everyday life of being a defender. So once you figure out what the offenders are, you might want to have a better look of what's actually running on that specific asset that is being under attack. So one of the signature views here, and as if you notice, this is a screenshot from the Scirius in Rich Hunting. We actually draw a fingerprint of that asset from in terms of network security posture. And we can say not only if there has been example alert events in there, but we want to be able to say what user agents we've seen from there, who's been logged in there, you know, okay, TLS connections that have been made, you know, we want to fingerprint those, and we actually have that snapshot to actually what we've seen active there from network perspective, purely watching on the network. Second, once we get down to actually those alerts, we would like to make them useful. So in other words, when you have an alert, and a lot of times you say, yeah, there's millions of those and there's false positive. Well, how about we provide the evidence of actually how it happened? So the conversation between these two assets, let's say, or in this case on the screen between these two IPs actually has generated, let's say, alert or alert events. We have the flow record, you know, defining what happened there in terms of everything transferred between the end host and packets, flow, bytes, all that stuff. But you also say, show me the actual evidence, what happened. Here in this case, it's actually Samba, SMB protocol logs. So this is the actual communication between, or actually the actual communication resulting from that lateral movement. So a very important aspect. As I was mentioning, important for us is to help the Blue and the defenders to integrate. So here is an example of the Stamos Splunk app, where actually there's a couple of screenshots here highlighting some information in purely perspective of network traffic analysis. So rare HTTP user agent scene, top server host names on internal network, and similar stuff. again, this is Splunk, this is not our screen, but this is our data. So we readily share that. And there are not that many vendors out there that do that, actually. If you actually go through the list, it's not so easy to share data between vendors. Well, again, as being people from the trenches, we know the importance of being able to easily fit into an existing infrastructure landscape. Talking about these notifications, currently a lot of SOC channels have, a lot of SOCs have actually SOC channel notification or some sort of messaging notification. That could be Slack or Mattermost or whatever. It's actually cool to be able to send messages to that channel so that everybody can see them and receive those notifications. So here's an example of one such notification. The next slide actually is an example of an automated webhook integration into the Hive, which is an incident response system. So it doesn't really matter if it's the Hive or ServiceNow or some other incident response system. You need to be able to provide that and be agnostic about it. So not a list of a specific applications that you work, but you have to be more. I have to do more to be able to enable that. Sorry, and one more. Oh, actually, we are right on time for the actual demo that I wanted to show you, which is what I've mentioned so far is actually what I've explained so far, rather, is the automation and the level that ThreatRadar provides. And being able to integrate it into an existing SOC or SOC architecture. And I think that's what IOs from Hunt and Hackett found useful about us and very useful about us, actually. And what I want to show you here now is an actual video of a very basic, simple concept. But actually, the idea is just to emphasize one of the points that I've been trying to make, and that is to be able to actually transfer knowledge and turn an idea or hypothesis easily into a reality, if you will. So let's move on to the okay. So we have here the video. I am going to start it. So what we have here, folks, is actually the Scirius and rich hunting, and then the Scirius and rich hunting interface. So here we have all sorts of broken down data and metadata from the system that actually allows you or empowers you to actually do your own active hunting or detection logic formulas or transfer knowledge. And as you can see, anything possible here to view is actually clickable. You can easily click, select, click, negate, wildcard it. You have all sorts of breakdown that are useful for actually hunting, because this is actually, we use it daily for investigations for hunting ourselves, and we constantly try to improve it. We actually try to guide the hunt as well by way of these filter sets. We have some predefined filter sets that are already there, that are based entirely, some of them entirely on network traffic analysis logic, some of this entirely on pure alert event hunting. You can create your own ones, like just now. And this is actually a very simple one. You can actually basically, what we're looking for is an executable advertised as an image coming in and out of the accounting department. So there's a couple of things you can do with that. You can either classify it, make it as informational relevant, or you can actually create your own custom threat vector. In this case, as this is an executable being transferred via HTTP, but being advertised as an image, of course, the offender is the source, because that's the web server. You say, hey, server, give me that file. The server says, here is the file. And actually, the asset is the destination IP where this file, the server gives the file. Asset type could be an IP username or an email address. We select the kill chain. One most important feature is to be able to go back in time based on that formula and say, I want to find out all that too. That's why storing all logs is important. We actually name it obfuscated executable going into accounting. We create our own threat event. we put it inside a rule set, and we update the logic on the sensors, let's say. So this is getting shipped out to the sensors, and let's go look and have a look at the serious threat radar. What we have there is actually that obfuscated executable appearing up. So we connect automatically the dots, going back in time, and saying, wow, all right, we have these two assets that they've been in the installation phase in the cybersecurity kill chain. So immediately giving visibility. Those are the assets. That's when we've seen them. They're of a type IP. We've also seen the user being logged in there and which part of the network coming. We can also easily point out what the offenders are. You also need to know the timeline, what happened when. So here it is. And that's what we mean really by empowering more advanced active hunters actually to transfer knowledge or to set up their own hunt with respect to the organizational context. And that's actually what I had in mind here so far. And I want to thank you very much for the time, both Scirius and SANS.
All right, thanks for that great presentation. We have a few questions ready for the Q&A, so I'm going to jump right in. The first question asks, has the panel had any success on correlating qualitative threat intelligence reports? For example, a darknet actor trying to sell XYZ with log alerts in a SOC, like a SIM?
Yeah, I can tell a little bit about that. That's hard to start with. And the problem that you have there is that it's, of course, because it's qualitative threat intel, that you need to parse it to actually visible observables in your data set. This is typically something that you would do during one of the hunts. And if something like that pops up on your radar, because you do need to monitor it specifically, put it on your backlog and well, do it when there's time. And it's hard to automate those kind of things. There is a tool from MITRE called TRAM that actually does a good job in translating reports, like qualitative reports, into more structured data. So that's something you may look into. It's TRAM.
I'll also add on to that, just as one additional notion, is what that sounds like to me is developing a program or process or capability for detection logic from within your hunting program in order to attempt to capture things. And Peter was actually talking about that specifically. It's like, here, once you've used the tool to be able to identify the sequence of things that you would look for that sort of activity, then you can turn that into a detection, which you can then go historically and look at it. And so the idea would be, it's like, if you learn that something went into a sale in a darknet type space where someone was selling your information, well, you can say, okay, well, there's the information that we know that we want to start from. Let's go think about how that would have left our network. So here's the stuff we're looking for. Let's develop a historical inspection, leveraging elements that we've discovered through a hunt or through some third-party notification. And so this closing the loop on qualitative type information becomes, how do I tactically deploy that, and empowering the analysts to be able to do that effectively is a massive challenge for everybody in security operations. And this is what we're trying to get to. And whatever we're going to use to do it, we need to train our staff to think that way. Of like, yeah, you found it one time, that's great. Congratulations for finding it that one time. Let's turn it into something that's procedural going forward so that everybody else can also find it should that ever occur again.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you find it once, that's a great point. If you find it once, you should be able to have the correct tools or processes to automate that, so we don't have to go and do it manually again. That automation should be one time. Then you move on to the next level. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, and it's operational capture initially, and then the movement into that larger scale use case within your SIM where things are, doing all of this stuff to have that granular detection. But at the very least, let me have a quick and dirty capture of that to be able to just like run the search again easily for all of my staff to notice that one thing once we've learned it. So.
All right, well, with that, we're out of time. I'll make sure that any other questions that were asked will be forwarded to STAMIS Networks for response. So thank you so much, Joost, Peter, and Chris, for your great presentation, and to STAMIS Networks for sponsoring this webcast, which helps bring this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.